Moments ago, President Donald Trump putting out on Truth Social, we have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran.
The second quite paradoxical takeaway is it's entirely unclear what has happened to that 400 kilogram stockpile of Iranian enriched uranium.
3 nuclear sites, one night. The United States launched a high-impact strike on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. It was fast, precise, and shocking. But while the bombs landed in Iran, the shockwaves hit capitals across the world. From Ottawa to Beijing to Moscow, world leaders are now recalibrating. And what follows may be more dangerous than the strike itself.
Stop. We heard from negotiations in Europe that was not being accepted by the Iranians, that they would not stop enriching uranium.
Late last week, President Trump confirmed the U.S. had carried out a direct military strike against 3 of Iran's most fortified nuclear facilities. Using B-2 bombers and bunker-busting munitions, the mission reportedly targeted a uranium enrichment site buried beneath rock, a storage complex, and a conversion plant. The Pentagon has not released full details, and international inspectors are still not on the ground. The announcement came just 2 days after nuclear negotiations with Iran collapsed in Europe, raising immediate concerns about escalation.
Canada has always been of the position that the Iran nuclear program is a threat to international security. The U.S. took these actions, I think, in trying to address that threat.
Security is why Mark Carney is in Europe.
One of the first governments to respond cautiously was Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney declined to make direct public statements, but his next steps said plenty. Just hours after the strike, he flew to Europe to sign a new defense and security agreement with the European Union. The deal aims to lower costs and increase access to military equipment, including ammunition, historically a logistical weakness in Canada's NATO capabilities. A senior Canadian official described it as a strategic pivot. At the same time, Canada is preparing to back NATO's proposal to raise collective defense spending from 2% to 5% of GDP, a significant shift. These moves reflect more than military planning. Canada is signaling it wants more autonomy in defense and trade. That means strengthening ties with Europe and subtly distancing itself from unpredictable U.S. military decisions. In this moment, Ottawa isn't rejecting Washington, but it's clearly choosing to hedge its bets.
And speaking of diplomacy, until now, Iran's closest allies, Russia and China, have not intervened.
Weaponries, and I think this is likely what Russia and China is already doing, or at least will do, which is to supply intelligence, send weapons or components for weapons.
Beijing, meanwhile, has criticized the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear facilities, saying again that it's willing to join international efforts to restore peace.
Meanwhile, in Beijing, the response was swift and direct. The Chinese government publicly condemned both the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iranian territory. Official editorials called the U.S. action a clear escalation, accusing Washington of bypassing diplomacy and raising the risk of wider regional conflict. Chinese state media criticized the use of bunker-buster bombs, describing it as an aggressive overreach designed to compensate for Israeli military limitations. On Chinese social platforms like Weibo, Iran was portrayed not as a nuclear threat, but as a victim of Western betrayal. A top trending sentiment. Countries that trust U.S. negotiations end up isolated and exposed. Still, China has not threatened military involvement. Beijing is maintaining its long-standing policy of non-intervention, but its tone has shifted. And that signals growing frustration and growing concern over the global ripple effects. In Moscow, the reaction was more calculated. Russia has not issued explicit threats, but analysts point to a deeper alignment taking shape. For years, Iran has been a quiet partner in Moscow's Eurasian strategy, providing drones and intelligence during the Ukraine conflict and pushing back against Western influence. Now, Russian experts warn they will not allow Tehran to collapse. That doesn't mean troops on the ground, but it likely means expanded military aid, intelligence sharing, and equipment transfers. Behind the scenes, Russia views this not just as a regional conflict, but as another front in what it sees as a U.S.-led campaign for regime change across non-Western states.
Iran is humiliated right now. It's very possible that they will, in fact, go faster than they were going before.
The question now isn't just whether Iran will respond, but how. Experts believe retaliation is inevitable. Iran could launch a limited strike on U.S. outposts, most of which have already been partially evacuated. Or it could escalate in cyberspace, targeting U.S. infrastructure. The riskiest option? Disrupting the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flows daily. That move could trigger a global energy crisis and possibly drag the region into deeper instability. Meanwhile, the U.S. faces reputational risks. Even close allies are questioning the sudden turn from failed diplomacy to open warfare. Economically, the threat of shipping disruptions and rising oil prices looms large. Politically, the administration must balance showing strength abroad without inviting long-term entanglement. Trump's strike was meant to project strength, but it may have triggered something else entirely. From Canada's quiet pivot to China's open condemnation and Russia's quiet escalation, America is facing a wall of resistance from friend and foe alike. And as retaliation looms, Washington now stands not just against Tehran, but potentially against a shifting global order.
We've seen the crude oil prices gain up by 10%, and it is 20% up now in the last 1 month.
Now, analysts estimate a security premium of up to $10 per barrel is now priced in.
You may not follow every headline from the Middle East, but if you've noticed your gas bill rising, your grocery tab growing, or your Amazon delivery fee inching up, then you're already feeling it. Oil prices are climbing, and it's not just about markets, it's about a war. As Israel strikes Iran and Tehran threatens to retaliate, global energy flows are at risk. The result? American consumers, from commuters to families, are starting to pay the price for a conflict thousands of miles away. Since fighting erupted between Israel and Iran on June 13th, oil prices have surged, up over 10% in a week and 20% over the past month. Brent crude briefly touched $78 a barrel before easing to around $75. What caused the spike? Not just the fighting, but the potential disruption. Israel has struck multiple energy sites in Iran, including a refinery fire in Tehran, damage to 2 gas processing plants in the south, and a partial shutdown at South Pars, one of the world's largest gas fields. The Ashan oil depot was also targeted. So far, no major export facility has been disabled. But markets are reacting to risk. And that risk centers on one place, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of global oil flows through this narrow waterway. A recent tanker collision in the area, amid suspected interference, underscored how quickly things could unravel. Markets have already priced in a $10 per barrel security premium based on that risk alone. According to analysts cited by Wyon and ExxonMobil executives on Fox Business, markets have priced in a $10 per barrel security premium, purely based on fears of escalation.
When you have oil prices rise, you have diesel prices rise. I mean, that's how trucks get your and my Amazon packages, our groceries, our cell phones when we go buy them at the store.
To many Americans, oil prices are just numbers until they show up at the gas station or on a grocery receipt. A jump of $10 to $15 in oil can ripple through the entire economy. Gas and diesel go up. That means higher costs for deliveries, farming, construction, and food distribution. It hits hardest in summer. Road trips get more expensive. Weekly gas bills climb, but it doesn't stop there. As diesel rises, so do warehouse costs, shipping fees, and even grocery logistics. One week, it's your delivery surcharge. The next week, it's milk, then lettuce, then eggs. So while missiles fall in Tehran, the economic shock hits checkout lines in Texas, Ohio, and everywhere in between.
Is that President Trump would be on the phone to the likes of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to pump more oil.
Interruptions. The position of OPEC and the position of OPEC with spare capacity is that they would go in and add supply.
Can anything stop oil from climbing higher? President Trump faces pressure to stabilize prices. One possible option, asking Saudi Arabia or the UAE to increase supply. But that's risky. If Gulf states ramp up production, it could inflame Iran, which has warned, if you hit our oil, we'll hit yours. OPEC Plus has already restored some output, adding 400,000 barrels a day. But Gulf nations are treading carefully. They don't want to be pulled deeper into this conflict and risk becoming the next target. Then there's the Federal Reserve. Before the crisis, the Fed planned to pause interest rates, but rising oil prices have complicated that. Chair Powell now faces a mix of tariff uncertainty, inflation pressure, and shaky consumer confidence, all of which could delay efforts to support the economy. Markets are on edge, supply chains are alert, and policymakers are bracing for impact. You may not live in Tehran or Tel Aviv, but you'll still pay for this war. At the pump, in your grocery run, and through every quiet price hike in your daily life. This conflict isn't just military, it's economic. And American households once again are footing the bill.